走りたい。
なんだ。
もう一度だけ走りたいんだ。
When the exhausted Straw Hats are at the verge of death, cornered at the port of Ennis lobby by the countless enormous warships of the arriving Buster Call, threatening to obliterate the entire island, at the very last moment, they are saved by none other than their ship. Seeing the pirate boat arrive is a heartwarming and tear-jerking scene that brings the adventure of Ennis lobby to a worthy end. It just feels so cathartic that the ship has come to protect her crew and sail with them all one last time. But why? How is it that we have built a relationship with not a character we love, but a ship? It's an easy enough question, but after sitting down to make this video, I had to find out the hard way that it actually has a really difficult answer. And that answer is anthropomorphism. So once you will have watched this video and figured out how to pronounce this word, you will not only be able to use this technique to improve your own stories, but also have learned a great new word you can annoy all your friends and family with. So let's explore how the Going Merry seamlessly unites a number of storytelling devices to create the perfect adventure story. To understand the entirety of how Oda turned a mere boat into an ingenious story element, we have to look at it from two perspectives: the Going Merry as a ship and the Going Merry as a character. So what makes the Going Merry so special, and what are these devices and techniques that you can use to take an everyday object and enhance your entire story with it to get that emotional reaction from your audience? I think before we look at how to turn an object into a character, a great place to start is to understand the true potential objects in themselves hold. You see, no matter what type of story you write, chances are that they will not only consist of people. Characters wear clothes, swing swords, drive cars, and eat food. So while all of these things can simply be part of your story for the sake of illustration and realism, instead of seeing them as necessary accessories for your writing, why not make use of these items and make them part of the experience? To illustrate this point, let's return to One Piece, because the Merry as a ship actually carries a lot of meaning and symbolism that functions as a framework for the pirate story that Oda's writing. First of all, the Going Merry is portrayed not as a mere vessel for transportation, but as a home for the entire Straw Hat crew. The ship is drawn comfortable and inviting, and thus creates a certain atmosphere in which the crew can relax, socialize, and live together. It's a space associated with positive experiences and bonding moments for the main characters. Secondly, the design of the ship gives additional characterization to the story. Despite being a pirate ship, the bright and friendly appearance of the Merry, and most of its rooms, immediately tells us what sort of people live here. This is further enhanced by details like the smiling lamb figurehead or Nami's tangerine trees that have been planted on deck. Even without knowing anything about the Straw Hats, simply looking at their ship alone would already tell us that these are good and friendly people. And of course, having a Jolly Roger on its sail, we also keep being reminded that this is a pirate crew traveling the seas. As a result, the ship and the crew are so closely connected that when you see the Merry, you can't help but think about the Straw Hats. Thirdly, the ship determines the space of our overall story by carrying Luffy and co. from adventure to adventure, and in the end also closer to their overall goal. Spending time on the ship almost always tells us that we're about to change location and start a new plot thread. And in a way, it also functions as a sort of intermezzo between arcs, where the crew, but also the audience, can relax and recover from the climax of the previous arc. And finally, the Merry as a ship also carries a lot of symbolism in the story. Or maybe I should say, it's actually filled to the brim with symbolism for both crew and reader alike. The pirate flag is a symbol, obviously, for the pirate story we're reading. The tangerine trees are a reminder of Nami's past and home, same as the Merry itself is a reminder for Usopp, just to name a few. On a larger scale, however, the ship symbolizes the spirit of freedom and adventure that defines One Piece as a story, and the increasing amount of damage it takes serves as a reminder for all the adventures the crew has been on and all the places they have traveled to. So, as you see, even when looking at it as nothing more than a ship, the Mary already adds quite a lot to the story. And you can be sure that Oda has sunken a lot of time into its design, using an object to create atmosphere, characterization, motion, and symbolism is a very effective way of drawing your audience deeper into the story and make them want to see more of it. And this can be applied to any object you can think of, like a piece of wood, or a ring, or even a chair, to create an immense emotional response in your audience. But there's even more that you can do to an object. You can actually make it into a character itself. I'm definitely not the first one that calls the Going Merry a part of the Straw Hat crew, and I strongly believe that Merry as a crew member does a wonderful job at enhancing the characters and the plot of the story. But how exactly can you give characterization to a ship, or any object at that? This is where the wonderful term from the beginning of this video comes into play: anthropomorphism. So what exactly is that? Anthropomorphism is a literary device that assigns human characteristics to non-human entities like animals or inanimate objects. So now you might think, well, that's great and all, but why would you want to do this? Because if done right, it introduces something unusual and thus captures the reader's interest and empathy. Anthropomorphism is actually quite popular these days, and of course anime and manga are no exception for this. In the case of the Going Merry, I'm of course talking about the ship's spirit that takes on human appearance in the form of the Klabautamann. As Frankie explains to Usopp, this is a rare manifestation of a ship's soul made possible by the love and care given to a ship by its crew. Thus, the small figure that Usopp witnesses repairing the broken ship on Skypiea is actually Merry herself. In other words, the Merry being alive is not a metaphor. She can actually communicate with people. And this is also not exclusive to the Straw Hats. When Merry wants to save her crew from Enies Lobby, she asks Iceberg to repair her for one last journey. This, I think, is important, because while Merry gains human-like characteristics, she still shows mostly traits and interests associated with the ship, and thus focuses on being a great pirate ship, repairing herself and carrying its crew through any hardship. So what then is the consequence of this technique? Well, the first thing that you will notice is that when humanizing an object, it can start forming relationships with your characters, or heck, it can even become a main character itself. The Merry undoubtedly has formed a bond with all of the Straw Hats, but Luffy and Usopp in particular actually communicate with her. Usopp promising to repair her, and Luffy apologizing for not taking better care of her. Secondly, the Going Merry offers a completely new direction for the plotline. She's the cause for stopping at Water 7 in the first place to look for a shipwright that might be able to repair her, and thus triggering the entire Water 7 and Enies Lobby saga, which I shamelessly admit is my favorite in the entire story. But even more creatively, Oda actually uses Merry to save the crew from Enies Lobby. This, I believe, is an especially strong moment, because the Straw Hats just declared war against the world government to save Robin. And despite being fought over and ultimately abandoned, Merry had such a strong connection to the crew that she was compelled to ask Iceberg to fix her so she could save her crew one last time and against all odds. Having that love and loyalty rewarded by their ship that came alive through these emotions in the first place is just a very powerful moment. And so, lastly, the Merry functions as a link between all of the Straw Hats. She was the place they all forged their relationships on and got to travel together. And thus, we really feel it in the end, when Merry gets a Viking funeral and has to say goodbye to her crew. It's not just feeling sad for a ship, it's feeling sad for a real character. And in the end, we even get some catharsis with the spirit of Merry being able to keep accompanying the crew on the rest of their journey. So that's it for today, guys. If you enjoy One Piece and want to learn more about storytelling, world building, or my thoughts on the latest One Piece chapter, make sure to like and subscribe to become part of the channel right now. I hope to see you around next time, and until then, Stay safe and have a wonderful week.